They left her, alone in the biting cold. The wind howled like a hungry wolf. Snow swirled around her, a cruel white shroud. Her breath plumed in the frigid air, each gasp a struggle. The village lights, once a beacon of home, now mocked her from the distance, fading with every agonizing step. They had cast her out, her own family, for being different, for being weak. Her father's words still echoed, a brutal hammer blow to her soul. "You are a disgrace." He hadn't even looked back. Her sister's laughter, a sharp, venomous sound, pierced the silence of the night. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than any blade. She stumbled, her numb fingers scraping against the frozen earth. The forest loomed, a wall of skeletal trees, their branches reaching like gnarled claws. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every rustle of leaves, a predator. She was just a girl, barely 18, with nothing but the thin clothes on her back and a heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. The cold seeped into her bones, a relentless enemy. Her feet, bare and bruised, screamed in protest, but no one heard. No one cared. She was the unwanted one, the anomaly, the one whispered about in hushed tones. They called her cursed. They called her weak. She fell again, this time unable to rise. The snow embraced her, soft and deceptive. Her eyelids grew heavy. The world began to fade, a blurry watercolor of white and gray. This was it. This was how it ended. Alone, forgotten. A cold, silent death in the wilderness. But the night wasn't done with her yet. A jolt, a sudden, searing pain, not cold, but fire. She gasped, her eyes snapping open. The world was no longer white. It was dark. Stone walls surrounded her, rough and ancient. Torches flickered, casting dancing shadows, painting the chamber in hues of orange and black. The air was thick with the scent of something primal, something earthy and metallic. Her head throbbed. Her body ached. But the cold was gone, replaced by a strange, humming warmth. She wasn't alone. 3 figures stood over her, tall and imposing. They moved with an unnatural grace, their forms blurring at the edges. Not human. She knew it instantly. Their eyes glowed, liquid gold in the dim light, fangs, sharp and gleaming, occasionally flashed when they spoke. Their voices were deep, resonant, like distant thunder. "She wakes," one rumbled, his voice a low growl. "Finally," another whispered, his tone laced with an ancient patience. "We have waited." The third, the tallest, stepped closer. His eyes, a mesmerizing amber, locked onto hers. A jolt, electric and profound, shot through her. Recognition. A hunger she didn't understand. A power she couldn't name. Something within her stirred, a dormant beast stretching its limbs. "You don't know who you are, do you?" he asked, his voice surprisingly gentle, yet laced with an undeniable authority. She tried to speak, but her throat was dry, her voice a mere croak. He knelt beside her, his presence overwhelming. "Your family hid you. They tried to erase the truth." His gaze was intense, piercing. "But blood doesn't lie, little one. Blood always finds its way back." He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek. A shiver, not of fear, but of something else, ran down her spine. "You should have died," he continued, his voice a low murmur. "But you didn't, because you are not weak." He paused, his eyes searching hers. "You are ours." And something inside her began to awaken. He told her everything. His name was Kale. He was ancient, a guardian. He spoke of a prophecy, whispered through centuries, a lineage, not human, but something far older, far more powerful, The blood of the first queen, a vampire monarch of unparalleled strength, flowed in her veins. Her mother, he revealed, was not human either. She was a vampire, a renegade, who had sacrificed everything to hide her daughter, to give her a semblance of a normal life. She had married a mortal man, hoping to shield Seraphine from the world that would claim her. Her family, the villagers, they hadn't hated her for being weak. They had feared her for what she truly was. They sensed the power, the difference, the ancient call in her blood. They had tried to destroy what they couldn't understand. Kale explained the ritual, the awakening. Her near-death experience had triggered it, a desperate plea from her dormant power. He spoke of the hunger, the thirst, the transformation that was already underway. He promised her strength, a purpose, a destiny far grander than she could ever imagine. He promised her a family, a true family, who would never cast her out. He promised her power, and something inside her began to awaken. Days blurred into weeks. Time lost all meaning in the hidden sanctuary. She learned to control the hunger, a gnawing beast that demanded satisfaction. Her senses sharpened. Every sound, every scent, every texture amplified 100-fold. She could hear the rustle of a mouse in the forest miles away. She could smell the fear on a distant deer. Her skin, once pale and fragile, now held a subtle luminescence. Her eyes, once a dull brown, now shimmered with flecks of gold. Fangs, sharp and elegant, extended when her emotions flared. Kyle became her mentor, her protector, her shadow. He taught her to hunt, to move silently through the night, to wield ancient weapons with deadly grace. He showed her how to channel the raw power that surged within her, a tempest waiting to be unleashed. He taught her the history of their kind, the intricate politics, the ancient laws. He taught her about the prophecy, the one that spoke of the chosen, the one who would rise when the world needed her most. He taught her about herself. Their training sessions were intense, grueling. He pushed her beyond her limits, forcing her to confront her fears, to embrace her new nature. There were moments, during their sparring, when their eyes would meet, a silent current passing between them. A recognition, a bond forming, deeper than words. She saw respect, admiration, and something else, something ancient and protective, in his golden gaze. He saw a queen in the making. She saw a guardian, a confidant, a silent strength that anchored her in this new, terrifying world. And something inside her began to awaken. One night, under a sky ablaze with stars, Kale led her to a hidden grove. Ancient stones, covered in glowing runes, formed a circle. This was the true awakening, he explained, the final step, a ritual to fully embrace her heritage, to connect with the power of the first queen. She stood in the center, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. Kale and the others chanted in a language she didn't understand, but whose vibrations resonated deep within her soul. The air crackled with energy. The runes on the stones pulsed with light. She felt a surge, a torrent of power, rushing through her veins, burning away the last vestiges of her human self. Visions flashed before her eyes. Ancient battles, forgotten empires, the face of a queen, fierce and regal, her own face. She was Seraphine. Not just a girl, but a legacy. Not just a survivor, but a queen. The transformation was complete. She was reborn. She was stronger, faster, more alive than she had ever been. The hunger was still there, but now it was a controlled force, a tool, not a master. She looked at Kale, her eyes shining with newfound power. He smiled, a rare, genuine smile that softened his stern features. "Welcome, Seraphine," he said, his voice filled with pride. "Welcome home." And something inside her began to awaken. She knew what she had to do. The village. Her family. They had to see, not for revenge, but for justice, for the truth. She returned under the cloak of a moonless night. Kyle and the others, a silent, watchful presence in the shadows behind her. The village was quiet, sleeping, oblivious to the storm that was about to break. She walked through the familiar streets, each step echoing with a new purpose. The houses, once symbols of her rejection, now seemed small, insignificant. She stopped before her childhood home. The scent of wood smoke, of stale fear, hung in the air. She pushed open the door. It creaked, a mournful sound in the stillness. Her father stirred, then sat up, his eyes wide with sleep-addled confusion. He saw her, not the weak girl he had cast out, but a creature of power, of darkness and light, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly intensity. He gasped, a choked sound of terror. He scrambled for a knife, his hand trembling. She simply looked at him. Her gaze, cold and unwavering, pinned him to the spot. He dropped the knife, falling to his knees. "And please," he whispered, his voice hoarse with fear, "you are our daughter." She could have killed him, could have made him suffer 1,000 times over for the pain he had inflicted, but that was not her way. Not anymore. "No," she said, her voice resonating with an ancient authority, echoing through the small room. "I was your daughter. You chose to leave me to die. Now you will live with that choice." She reached out, her fingers brushing his forehead. A torrent of images, of memories, of her new reality flooded his mind. He saw her transformation, her power, the ancient lineage. He saw what he had lost, what he had destroyed. He screamed, a raw, guttural sound of pure madness. When he awoke, he was broken, his mind shattered by the truth. She left him there, a living testament to his cruelty. Her sister, roused by the scream, tried to flee. Seraphine caught her in the forest, the same forest where she had been left for dead. "You laughed," Seraphine said, her voice devoid of emotion. Her sister whimpered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry." "It's not about apologies," Seraphine replied, her eyes locking onto her sister's. "It's about justice. She didn't kill her. Instead, she left her alive, but forever changed." Her sister would carry the memory of Seraphine's return, the truth of her power, a living witness to the queen she had become. She would tell the tale, a chilling warning to all who dared to underestimate the chosen. As Seraphine walked away from the village, a faint glow appeared on the horizon. Not the dawn, but the first tendrils of fire. Not an act of vengeance, but a cleansing. A necessary end to a place that had tried to extinguish her light. Kale met her at the edge of the woods, his golden eyes reflecting the distant flames. "You returned," he stated, his voice a low rumble. "I always return," she replied, her gaze meeting his. The air crackled between them, a silent understanding, a shared destiny. He knelt, not as a protector, but as a subject. "You are the queen," he whispered, his voice filled with reverence. "And I am yours." She reached out, her fingers gently lifting his chin. "And we are equals now," she said, her voice soft, yet firm. "You saved me. I saved myself." But as they turned to leave, a sudden chill swept through the forest. The wind, once a familiar companion, now carried a different scent. Something ancient, something malevolent. The trees around them began to wither, their leaves curling and blackening, not from the cold, but from an unseen force. Kyle stiffened, his body rigid with alarm. "No," he whispered, his voice laced with dread. "It's not possible. She was sleeping. She should have slept for another 1,000 years." Seraphine felt it too. A presence, vast and terrifying, older than time itself. a power that dwarfed even her own. The air grew heavy, suffocating. The moon above them, once a pale orb, began to bleed. Not red, but black. A void in the sky. "What is it?" Seraphine demanded, her newfound power trembling against the encroaching darkness. Kale pulled her close, his arm a protective band around her. "The reason you were chosen," he said, his voice strained. "You were not just a rescue, Seraphine. You were a call." Deep beneath the earth, under layers of stone and forgotten history, something ancient stirred, something that had woven the prophecy, something that had waited for her. And it began to rise. But something far older had already awakened, and it was coming for her,